Gently close your eyes. Do deep breathing. We'll chant Om once together. Synchronize the chanting of Om with your exhalation. Breathe in. Sahana vavatu, sahanau bhunaktu, sahaviryam karavavahai, tejasvinavaditamastu ma vidvishavahai. Om Shanti, Shanti, Shanti. Gently open your eyes. We'll chant from verses 1 to 5 of chapter 3. Arjuna Uvacha.
Arjuna Uvacha.
Jayasi chet karmanaste.
Jayasi chet karmanaste.
Mata buddhir janardana.
Mata buddhir janardana.
Tat kim karmani ghore mam.
Tat kim karmani ghore mam.
Niyojayasi keshava.
Niyojayasi keshava.
Vyamishreneva vakyena.
Vyamishreneva vakyena.
Buddhim mohayasiva me.
Buddhim mohayasiva me.
Tadekam vada nishchitya.
Tadekam vada nishchitya.
Yena shreyohamapnuyam.
Yena shreyohamapnuyam.
Shri Bhagavanuvacha.
Shri Bhagavanuvacha.
Lokesmin dvividha nishtha.
Lokesmin dvividha nishtha.
Pura prokta maya nagha.
Pura prokta maya nagha.
Jnana yogena sankhyanam.
Jnana yogena sankhyanam.
Karma yogena yoginam.
Karma yogena yoginam.
Na karmanam anarambhat.
Na karmanam anarambhat.
Naishkarmyam purushošnute.
Naishkarmyam purushošnute.
Nacha sanyasanadeva.
Nacha sanyasanadeva.
Siddhim samadhigacchati.
Siddhim samadhigacchati.
Nahi kaschit kshanamapi.
Nahi kaschit kshanamapi.
Jatu tishtatya karmakrit.
Jatu tishtatya karmakrit.
Karyate hyavashah karma.
Karyate hyavashah karma.
Sarva prakriti jair gunaihi.
Sarva prakriti jair gunaihi.
Hari Om, and a very good day to all of you. So when we take the scriptures, they are always in the form of a conversation between the master and the student. Sometimes more than one student when we go to the Upanishads. Sometimes it could be one student asking a question to the master and the master communicating to that particular student. Now, there are a lot of advantages when these principles are given out in the form of a dialogue. What happens is, when a master gives a lecture, that also has its advantages because there is no one to impede the flow. See, a master has a particular flow, from there he will go on giving the messages. That is the advantage of that. But the only thing there is, the focus will be more on the principles. Now, when a student asks a question, what will happen is, the student will create a context where the principles can be applied. Supposing the student says, I have this particular issue, sir. So how will this principle work? Then the master will apply that wisdom in that context and explain. So when that is done, we also get to see how this wisdom can be practically applied. So that combination is there in the Bhagavad Gita. It's not that in every chapter Arjuna will ask a question and only then Krishna will answer. It's not like that. In the next chapter again Arjuna asks. But there are many chapters where without Arjuna asking, Krishna just starts giving the higher wisdom. That is the natural flow of the master once the student is ready. But every now and then he pauses and allows Arjuna to express himself, so that the context is created for an application. So the combination works the best. When we come to those chapters where straight away Krishna talks, there I'll explain this in greater detail, because whenever a master utters something in a flow, now that energy is tremendous. If you can absorb that, that will completely transform you. So in our yogic approach, we always combine these two aspects. One is the natural flow of the master. From his level he will talk, he will give the higher messages without any interruptions. That is also so important, because if every time if the student asks a question and only then the master will answer, what will happen is the student will not be able to conceive the higher. So he will only keep asking questions pertaining to his level. The student will be focusing more on the problem. So the chances of the master giving the higher principles will become less. So that is why in the good old days they used to combine these two, which is what is the yogic approach. Sometimes a master may get an inspiration, so he may just call all the students and say, this is the message. He may just give. Sometimes he will wait for the students to absorb and then create a context so that he can help the students to learn the application. So as we go through the Bhagavad Gita, we'll find both these principles are being adopted. But one thing is very clear: unless there is a seeking from the student, the master is not going to talk. That is why I said if there is no Arjuna, if there had been no Arjuna Vacha, there wouldn't have been Sri Bhagavan Vacha. If Arjuna hadn't spoken. Here, when we say Vacha, it is not merely speaking, it's a seeking. Unless and until the student seeks, the master is not going to talk. Once the seeking is there, sometimes the student may ask a verbal question, sometimes the student may not ask a verbal question. It does not matter. Depending on the absorption capacity of the student, the master will communicate, will give out this wisdom in various ways. Actually, many a times, it is not merely giving the knowledge in a sequential way. Many a times what a master may do is, if the student has surrendered, the master may expose the student to some challenge in the world. He may give some work and say, do this. Now actually the master doesn't require any help, because he is in a state of paripurna. Paripurna means total satisfaction. It is more to train the student that he gives. He says, can you do this work for me? The very concept of, if you read the Puranic stories, the very concept of the student serving the master is this. Apart from gratitude, and there are so many other aspects, but one of the key aspects is that the master provides an opportunity for the student to serve. Why I am saying the master provides an opportunity is because, truly speaking, if he is a true master, he will not require any favors from the student. He is already one with the infinite. So when the master gives some assignment to the student and the student starts working on that, he starts doing it. In that process, he will go on correcting him. He will go on teaching him many things. That is application. So there are so many ways by which a guru actually imparts this wisdom. It is not just one way, through a lecture or through by answering the questions. See, when that context comes, we are going deep into it, and I'm explaining how wonderful it is when Arjuna asks these questions, because that helps us. But that doesn't mean the communication of this wisdom is restricted to merely this format. A master has infinite ways of teaching. Sometimes the master may teach very, very indirectly. He may be talking to one person and he may be giving some message to that person directly, but indirectly he may be giving the message to another person who may have accompanied this person, who may just be standing. So the hidden message may go to that person. So that is why, if you it's very difficult to understand a master and his ways. He has his own way of communicating, his own way of training, because every situation is so different. Every one is so unique. You cannot have standard methods. So it is of utmost importance for the student to seek and be alert. If a student is very alert, he will catch all the messages which the master is trying to give him or her. But when the student is asleep means, I don't mean literally physically sleeping. I mean at the inner level. If the student is not alert, that's what we mean by sleeping, here spiritually. So when a student is not alert, then he may be moving with the master, but he will still not catch the frequency. See, attuning to the master's frequency is the key. It takes quite a while for the student to align his or her frequency with the master's. Actually, when we take the first two verses of chapter 3, now we should read them together. That's why it's a continuation. It is not that Arjuna stops asking in the first verse and then he asks something different in the second verse. The first verse there is something which he asks, and then in the second verse he continues from there and he completes his question. And just because he has stopped asking here doesn't mean now his questions have stopped. Actually, in the very next chapter, he will rephrase the same question, but when we come there we'll see he will be putting it in a much more specific way, which means his clarity has increased. It's a gradual process of development. So in this conversation between Arjuna and Krishna, one of the facets which is revealed is a relationship between the teacher and the taught, between the guru and the shishya. It is a very sacred relationship and it builds over a time, over a period of time. It's not that right from day one, now the student is, has completely surrendered and now the master gives. That's very rare. That can also happen provided the student has already done a lot of tapas in the previous births, done a lot of sadhana. Then only he'll be able to surrender completely. Usually the karmas block a student from surrendering. It's not so easy. So what are the different stages in the relationship between a master and a student? It would be worthwhile understanding that a little bit, so that along with the messages given by, direct messages given by Krishna, we also absorb the energy of how Arjuna is slowly getting attuned to Krishna's frequency. See, that is what is most difficult. The intellectual part itself is no doubt very deep, but that is relatively easy for a student to absorb than absorbing the energy which the master gives. See, Arjuna is finding it difficult to even intellectually understand what Krishna says, but that can be overcome. It is only a question of practicing. But attuning to Krishna's frequency is the most difficult thing for Arjuna. And when I am saying it is extremely difficult for Arjuna to attune himself to Krishna's frequency, it is a universal message. It is very difficult for a student to attune himself or herself to his master's frequency, because they are functioning from two different dimensions. The master vibrates at a higher frequency because he is completely attuned with the infinite, whereas the student is vibrating at a lower frequency. What do we mean by vibrating at a higher or lower frequency? See, every thought, every emotion, every action, all the words which we use, our mannerisms, our expressions, everything depends on the frequency with which we operate. So externally, two people may be doing the same activity, but one may be from a higher level, that is higher level of consciousness, another may be from a lower level of consciousness. It depends on from what frequency is that person operating from. So, whenever Arjuna asks a question and we are going deep into that, we will get the deeper insights of what are the blocks which Arjuna is facing to attune himself to Krishna. That is going to be very useful to us as sadhaks. So, in a broad sense, there are three stages we can say when a student approaches a master. We can say there are three stages in the relationship. The first stage of relationship, which is the starting point, is that of appreciation. That is, a student starts appreciating what a master gives. A general appreciation. So when a student meets a master, it is not that at the moment he meets he'll surrender. As I told you, if that happens, it means the student is at a very advanced level. But the flow is this only. First, the student will begin to appreciate. When the appreciation is there, he will start getting attracted to whatever the master is giving. That itself is not so easy. To generally appreciate what a master gives is so difficult, because true masters may not put things in a very attractive way. They will not necessarily entertain the masses. See, wherever there is depth, the quality is there, quantity will become less. Real masters may not have a very huge following. Many of the masters came to be known much later, after they left their bodies. Some of their students only spread the glory of their masters. But otherwise, when they were functioning in the body, when they were alive, they taught only a select few. Why? Because when the quality is very high, it is difficult for everybody to appreciate it. When we reduce the quality, automatically everyone, even a person who doesn't have any depth, will instantly be able to appreciate. Like the difference between classical music and non-classical music. Non-classical music will appeal to anyone, but the charm will also die away fast. Many of the songs which are non-classical, especially many songs which come in the movies and all that, you see, the first time you hear it will just hit you and everybody will get excited, but after a few times they will no longer hear that. Whereas if you take the same movie industry, whenever the songs have a background in classical music, like the old black and white movies and all that, the songs, now why are they use the word evergreen songs. Why do they say that? Every time you listen to that pulls you more, that gives you more and more enjoyment. But not everybody will get attracted to that kind of music. The extroverted mind will get attracted to non-classical things very fast. But to even appreciate the classical things of life, it's not only music, in every aspect, that itself requires a certain amount of depth. That's why you should never judge a master based on the external factors like the number of followers and all that. Some of the greatest masters have gone away and they are not known. The many Siddhas in the Himalayas and even in the south also. If you go to the Tiruvannamalai and many other places, there are Siddhas, they were Siddhas, but nobody ever even came to know about them. They did the greatest seva by meditating and they kept radiating this higher healing energy to everyone. So never ever go by the externalities. Just because a person is famous, that doesn't mean the person has quality, not necessarily. Sometimes it may happen that a person who has genuine quality over a period of time that may spread also. That is also possible, but that's quite rare. Always go by the quality. So for a student to appreciate what the master is saying itself requires a lot of depth. See, Krishna was an avatar, but how many people even appreciated the spiritual greatness? Very few people. He spoke to a few gopis, here and there only he spoke. Then he spoke to Arjuna, he spoke to Uddhava. That was just before he was about to leave his body. Like that, you find very few people even appreciated Krishna's spiritual greatness. So that is the first step, that is the starting point of a relationship between a master and a student. Now once the appreciation is there, the student will automatically start getting attracted to the master. Like how the iron piece gets attracted to the magnet. Then whenever he gets time, he'll want to spend time with the master. Okay, what does he have to give? He will start associating himself with the wisdom which the master is giving. all those things will start. And slowly, this appreciation will turn into what we call as bhakti. Bhakti means devotion. That is the second stage. So, Vyasa is actually portraying this development in Arjuna. When we read the entire Bhagavad Gita, you will see that Arjuna starts off first, he doesn't even know Krishna's greatness. Then he slowly begins to appreciate. Then he becomes devoted. And then we'll see what the third step is. That is how the entire Bhagavad Gita is structured. So when we absorb that flow, we will also start practicing it automatically. So in the stage of devotion, see what is the difference between devotion and appreciation? When we stop with appreciation, there is no personal connection. So when you appreciate and when you get attracted to what the master is giving, you start receiving certain as a certain bit of this wisdom, and that will calm your mind. You will get a lot of benefits. Many issues in your life will start getting resolved. So you will acquire a lot of benefits. When that happens, automatically the student will become very grateful. That is the stage of devotion. He or she will form a personal connection with the master. Almost, it's not necessary that a student has to be physically close with the master. It's not like that. It's the frequency matches more. Will start matching more. The spiritual closeness will increase. The student develops a lot of emotions for the master because he begins to realize that the master has infinite love, infinite emotions for him or for her. That recognition happens. When a student generally appreciates a master, he sees him as a person who has a lot of wisdom, that's all. But now he begins to see the master as a person who is full of love, unconditional love, one who accepts the other person as he or she is. That is when the devotion develops. So when you are at the stage of appreciation, you will receive, the capacity for you to receive this wisdom will be minimum. But such a person will receive. If there is no appreciation at all, a person cannot gain this wisdom. Then when the student moves to the stage of devotion, now he develops more capacity to absorb this wisdom. Because when the gratitude is there, when the reciprocation of the love starts, see there is no difference between love and devotion in terms of the emotion. It is just that whenever the emotion is directed to the world, we call it love. When the emotion is directed to something higher, we call it devotion. Like we say, we are devoted to God, we are devoted to the Guru, we are devoted to the parents, because we place them at a higher pedestal. We can use the word love also. It is said, no, commonly love is God. That is correct. But when we use the word devotion, it is useful for us in our sadhana. So, bhakti or devotion is nothing but that unconditional love and gratitude. The most interesting part is the master has infinite bhakti or devotion towards the student. So the day the student starts recognizing it, the reciprocation will automatically start. And unless that relationship starts building, the master will not be able to give more wisdom, more energy to the student, because the student cannot receive. See, the whole Exercise is not to form another relationship. No. Actually, we have to break all the limitations, all attachments, and become one with infinite. That is the ultimate goal. So this is not forming another relationship. It is actually the different stages by which the student can maximize or increase his or her chances of receiving this wisdom, receiving the higher Shakti, higher energy. That is the second stage. Now, when a student becomes very devoted, then he or she starts doing the sadhana, the spiritual practice which the master gives in a very devoted way, with a lot of faith. Then slowly, the student moves to the third stage in the relationship, which is surrender. Now, what is the difference between devotion and surrender? It is only increasing the intensity. See, first it starts with appreciation, the emotion I'm saying. Then it becomes devotion. Then it further develops into surrender. So when a student starts the process of surrender, it's not so difficult. It's not so easy to surrender. A person may be very devoted, but then that person may not surrender to the master at all. When a person is at the stage of devotion, the master will give this wisdom generally. But when a student surrenders, then the master will give personal advice. As I have told you, advice is never given, it is always taken. And it is not that, till yesterday I didn't surrender, so today I decide, no, let me surrender, I'll surrender. It's not so easy like that. In the ancient wisdom, they have given surrender as a path, as a process. Because there are many stages in surrender. I am not going to get into that fully now, because as we go along, we'll see that. But you have to have this general understanding of how Arjuna, chapter by chapter, he is becoming a better student, a better sadhak. So when you are in the stage of appreciation, you are not a student. You are in the process of becoming a student. Then when you get into a stage of devotion, you become a student and a sadhak also. You start doing sadhana. But then when you get into the stage of surrender, now you start removing your ego. See, you can surrender only when you don't have ego. So surrender is a process by which the student learns to dissolve the ego. Many blocks will come and prevent the student from surrendering. That's what we are seeing in verses 1 and 2. Just see, in 2 verses Arjuna is talking, so many blocks are being given out. So as we go along, whenever the context comes, more such blocks will be revealed, and how you can solve them also. So here he is giving as an example, he is giving 3 blocks to for which a student will face when he or she tries to practice a surrender. The first block is at the physical level. That's what we saw. When a master gives the advice and says, follow this, there will be a resistance for the student to change his course of activity, course of action. So the student has to use the willpower there. Yes, whatever the master is asking me to do may not be so pleasant to start with, because I have to change my habits, I have to change my course of activity. yet I will do it because this is what is good for me. That willpower, that understanding will help the student to overcome that block. The second block the student will face when he tries to surrender is the emotional block. He will start doubting the intentions of the master. That was beautifully depicted by two words, Janardana and Keshava. We saw that. So whenever that kind of doubt comes, the trust goes away, then the student has to reinforce the bhakti part, the devotion part. That's how he'll be able to conquer that. Because if the trust goes away, the relationship will fall apart. Any relationship is based on trust only. All these agreements and all that is not a true relationship. It may be useful from the legal sense of the term, but relationship is always heart to heart. That's why they say in business, whenever it comes to business dealings, there is always an agreement. But the funniest part is what I was told is that the trend has started a few years back itself, that even in marriage they are putting contracts. The husband and wife, they put conditions, clauses and all that. Like you keep your things on the right side of the shelf, I'll keep my things on the left side of the shelf. Everything is how they are going to live together is explained in a detailed way in that agreement. Which means, supposing by mistake, if let's say one person keeps his or her thing on the other side, if the husband wants or if the wife wants, whoever is the other person, that person can go to the court and say, see, he or she has not kept up to is not followed the rules of the agreement, so I want to divorce. It can be granted. It has become as absurd as that. And they put a 2-year contract subject to renewal. See, then the sanctity of the relationship goes away. The first thing in a relationship, if the relationship has to be deep, the commitment should be there, no? The commitment will only give the trust, commitment, all these things go together. So in our ancient system, marriages were based on commitments. Where two people commit to each other, to love each other unconditionally, to go along with the ups and downs of life together. It's a very sacred thing. That is why some thinkers said marriages are made in heaven. Heaven doesn't mean we have to go some place there. What he means is it's a spiritual thing. See, our ancient yogis spiritualized everything. So when it came to a relationship also, they added a lot of spiritual dimensions to a relationship like marriage. So losing trust in the motives, that is another block. And then we also saw how Arjuna is trying to blame Krishna. You are trying to confuse me. You are confusing my understanding by giving intermixed statement, Vyamishrena, means all confusing statements you're making. So this is the intellectual confusion, intellectual block. When a master gives advice, the student may get into this feeling that, oh, master has not understood my problem fully. So that block also has to be overcome. These are a few blocks which is giving few main blocks. So as sadhaks, when we work on these blocks internally, we'll become more purified, we'll become more prepared to receive the higher energy, higher wisdom from the Guru Shakti. This is not merely related to a personal guru alone. I'm talking of, we can extend it to the Guru Shakti, the force of the infinite, the Guru, the teacher element in the infinite, which is trying to teach us through every experience of life. So when a student does the sadhana and removes the ego and goes on surrendering more and more and more, a time would come where the surrender will become complete, 100%. And when a student surrenders 100%, then he will become a master. He'll become a sthita prajna. You become enlightened, you become a sthita prajna, not by becoming great. No, it is by becoming nothing that you become the infinite. See, that's why I said everybody wants to become like Krishna. But Krishna has no ego. No master has that ego. It is a world that may that may say you are a master and all that. But that particular person will never feel that. He will always be basking in the glory of the infinite. So it is by becoming a perfect student that you can reach perfection. You can become a master. Not by wanting to become a master. See, it's a catch-22 situation. Those who don't want any spiritual recognition will get spiritual recognition. Spiritual recognition here means, I'm saying spiritual growth in the sense of wanting to, be an enlightened person, wanting to be a master and all that. When you overcome that tendency and just you start learning, that's why Dattatreya said, be an eternal student. Because the more you learn, the more you will master any subject. The same rules are applicable from the spiritual sense also. So that is why we have to study the Bhagavad Gita not merely as a wisdom which is coming from Krishna, but we have to study it as a conversation between Arjuna and Krishna, so that we understand how Arjuna gets transformed. It's so beautifully given out, Vyasa was a genius. Actually, Vyasa is a common name. It is not one person. It's a state. There were many Vyasas actually. It is said that in every yuga Vyasa appears, Very interesting. So this is these are the different stages. From appreciation, you move to devotion, and from the state of devotion, you move to surrender. They are only increasing in terms of intensity. It's the same emotion only, but the quality of that emotion keeps increasing. Whenever you want to love someone, you will first have to appreciate something in that person. Then the emotions will start developing and your love will increase. And when the quality of love increases, then it becomes more unconditional. Why is it that a master is having unconditional love for everyone? Because he always appreciates the spiritual potential of everyone. He doesn't see the defects of the students. When I say he doesn't see, I mean he doesn't judge a student based on the defects. Of course, he has to see, otherwise the correction is not possible. But what does he appreciate? He appreciates the inherent spirituality, the spiritual potential in every student. Therefore, a master has this unconditional love. So, Arjuna Uvacha flowing into Sri Bhagavan Uvacha is a beautiful message. The relationship between Arjuna and Krishna. So, till this moment, Arjuna looked at Krishna merely as a friend. It was only a worldly relationship. But now, Arjuna is beginning to relate to Krishna in a spiritual way also. And only when Arjuna started relating to Krishna in a spiritual way, Krishna started guiding him. Till this moment, even though Krishna was very close to Arjuna as a friend, he never guided him. He never gave him any advice. Probably Arjuna may have tried to give a lot of advice to Krishna. But the day he started relating to him in a spiritual way, that is when he started giving out this wisdom. And that goes in these three stages: appreciation to devotion, from devotion to surrender. So as sadhaks, if you can absorb this flow, it will be so wonderful. It's not only for this chapter. This is for your entire life. When you absorb this flow, in life itself, your bhavana will start increasing. You will start appreciating the goodness in everyone. And when you start appreciating the good thing in others, you will automatically start developing love towards them. I'm saying from a worldly sense also. And as the love deepens, it will become unconditional. So whatever in the yogic approach you will be practicing with respect to the Guru Shakti, that will help you to improve your relationships in the world also. It's only a question of application. So, in verse number 2, Arjuna says, with intermixed statements as it were, you are seemingly confusing my understanding. A genuine block which Arjuna is facing. He feels Krishna is confusing him. So last week, I mentioned to you that Arjuna is, when Arjuna says that you are confusing me, that shows the deeper sadhana tip which we get. What does it show? Arjuna is confused and he is projecting that on Krishna. He is projecting his mind onto Krishna. So the human mind has this tendency to keep blaming others for their issues. So I did mention last week that whenever there is an issue, when you blame others, that is an ordinary level of thinking. But a spiritual level of thinking, the extraordinary way of thinking is when you start looking within, because you are the ultimate source of whatever is happening to you. Now, I asked you to reflect on that point, and I'm sure all of you would have done that and you would have absorbed that. So as a continuation of that, I'll give you one more tip there, which is very, very crucial. When it is said that you are the cause for whatever is happening, you are the cause for the problem which you are going through, that there is a chance for the mind to start blaming itself. That is, you may lose your confidence. See, let's take an example. Where a spouse is insulting his or her partner, okay? Now, let us say your spouse is insulting you. Actually, I gave that example last week also. So one thing is to say, the spouse is insulting me, therefore I am agitated, I am going through all this stress. Even though you are factually right, that is not going to help you. So when it is said that no, you are the cause for the problem, that doesn't mean now you are to be blamed. See, what happens is, many sadhaks are not able to practice this aspect of the wisdom because they are afraid to even absorb this wisdom where it says you are the center, you are the cause for everything. Because then, as long as you're blaming another person, it's fine. But now when you start blaming yourself, now whatever problems I'm facing, now I am to be blamed. That's how it turns out to be, So the mind refuses to even look into that. Mind refuses to start thinking that way. But what you need to understand is, when it is said that you are the cause, it's not a self-blame we are talking about. See, the mind is so used to blaming others that when a master gives out this point and he says, you are the source, immediately the mind thinks that, oh, now I am to be blamed, is it? It is not a question of blaming. See, first of all, you need to remove this idea of blaming anyone, whether it is some other person outside or whether it is yourself. If you just direct the blaming from others to yourself, you will start losing your self-confidence. You will get frustrated. Oh, now I am only responsible for everything, is it? The depression will start coming. That is not the idea. When it is said you are the cause, it is not a blame. What it means is, you have the control, you have the power to solve the issue. When you are putting the cause when you're putting the cause into some external factor, like some person outside, now you don't have any control to solve the issue. So let us say your spouse insults you. Now, I'm not saying no, you take the blame on yourself. No, something is wrong with me, that is why I'm not saying that. That is not what this wisdom is all about, blaming oneself and losing one's confidence. All that is being said is, you now have the power to solve the issue. You have the power to not allow that insult to disturb your peace of mind. This is the first step, so that you can become strong from within. And then you have the power to communicate whatever you want to communicate to the other person. The communication may be verbal, non-verbal, sometimes in a polite way, sometimes in a slightly stern way, but you decide how it has to be done. It shouldn't come in a reactive way, impulsive way. This is a very subtle point which all of you should absorb, because if you don't absorb this point, if you just merely try and practice what was said in the previous lecture without going into the depth of it, you may end up losing your confidence in life. So what is being given here actually will build your confidence. So when it is said that you are the cause for your problem, what it means is you are the solution also for the problem. You have the solution within you. The ultimate control is within you only, not with the other person. I am mentioning this because I received several mails where, all those in those mails, some of the sadhaks have started blaming themselves for the inability to face the challenges. That is also wrong. See, the law of karma, this is karma yoga, and law of karma is an essential aspect of karma yoga. The law of karma is not a blame game. Let us find out who which person we can blame for our issues. Till now you were blaming others. Now law of karma states, now you are the cause. So let me now blame myself. That is not application of this wisdom. When law of karma states you are the cause, it means you have the power to change your circumstances. So if your spouse is insulting you, that is that person's problem. Why should you allow that insult to go into your mind? That is where the sadhana comes. Through the yoga sankirtan sadhana, release whatever incidents have affected you. Release all those impressions from the deeper layers of your mind and become very strong. And then externally deal with the situation. As I told you last week, if required, talk to your spouse. Say that this, there should be a mutual respect. But don't say it out of a weakness. Become strong from within, emotionally strong from within. Then your capacity to handle all the issues will increase. So a small slip there, you will totally misunderstand the concept. So when you don't understand this as a, that is this point as a, as a source of strength where you have the power to change, then whereas when you understand that it is a self blame, then you will resist it. You will not want to practice it. That will become a block. So it's a very subtle sadhana which was given to you. And for those of you who did the sadhana, who reflected genuinely, now the tip which has been given now will help further. And it is by absorbing this principle of law of karma that you can actually become a karma yogi. You can transform yourself and you can transform your entire life, every aspect of your life. So with intermixed statements as it were, you are seemingly confusing my understanding. Now, Arjuna uses the word iva twice. Vyamishrena iva. With intermixed statements as it were. Iva means as it were, apparently. Means it's not true. That's what it means. So, Vyamishrena iva. Vakyena buddhim mohayasi iva. Again he says. So, when he talks of Krishna making confusing statements, he uses the word iva, as it were. Again, when he says, you are trying to confuse me, mohayasi iva, again he says, as it were, apparently. This is the reflection of bhakti or devotion which Arjuna has. See, Arjuna has started the process of surrender. He is facing so many blocks. But the base devotion which he has is what is going to help him to overcome these blocks. Even though he is blaming Krishna, he is also using the word iva, as it were. That is a reflection of the deeper mind, the devotion which is there in the deeper mind, the affection which he has towards Krishna. He says, my mind, due to my ignorance, my mind is seeing all these doubts. I am doubting you, I am doubting your statements, I am doubting your motives, all that. But somewhere deep within him, he knows that it is all his own making, it is his own confusion. So that has been so beautifully depicted by Vyasa by using the word iva twice. Otherwise, in one statement you will not use the word as it were again. While translating it into English, one iva has been translated it as it were. Other iva, we have translated it as seemingly confusing, just to give that difference. But otherwise, if literal translation, if we go with intermixed statements as it were, you are as it were confusing my understanding. Nobody will use the same word within one statement like that. So if Vyasa has put this word twice in one statement, now you should become alert. I told you, no, alertness is the key to get the messages from a master. Sometimes the messages may be direct, sometimes the messages may be indirect also. So there is a subconscious hesitation to blame the master. Even though Arjuna is blaming Krishna, but there is also that hesitation to blame him. What is causing that hesitation? It is the bhakti, devotion. That is why I said appreciation to bhakti, bhakti to surrender. So when you try to practice the surrender and when all these blocks come and try to pull you away from the path of destroying your ego, it is the basic devotion that will help, the bhakti. So why is Arjuna glorified so much? Not for his surrender, because he is learning to surrender. It is because of his bhakti towards Krishna. A master always sees whether the student has the basic devotion. Only then there is a purpose in giving out this wisdom. Otherwise, it will all be, the efforts will be wasted only. So he says, you are with intermixed statements as it were, and then you are seemingly confusing, you are confusing my understanding as it were. 2 times he uses that, which means Arjuna has basic humility and devotion, but the surrender is not yet complete. There's nothing wrong with that. It's a process, you know. That is also sadhana. If the surrender is complete straight away, then Arjuna will have no issue at all. So a student should never develop an unnecessary guilt over lack of surrender. If a student has already learned to surrender fully, there is no necessity for a master. The Guru Shakti will fully flow into that person and that person will get enlightened. So take it as a path, this whole thing. As long as a basic devotion is there, you are on the right path. And whenever the ego manifests, you should go on resolving that particular aspect of the ego. The ego will not manifest at one go. It will keep manifesting in different areas in different ways. Sometimes in a gross way, sometimes in a subtle way also. The ego can even, see, you should be a little careful here. The ego can even come in the form of a display of bhakti or devotion. An unnecessarily outward manifestation of devotion. I am not saying devotion should not be expressed. When it's expressed naturally, it's so wonderful. But sometimes the ego can come there. I am only a greater bhakta than others. It can come in the guise of surrender also. I am surrendering. So sometimes it can come in subtle ways. So as long as your intention is pure, the invisible help from the Guru Shakti will always be there. So the Guru Shakti will help the student who is devoted to master this principle of surrender. And when you learn to surrender, which means letting go of your ego completely, then when you become a zero, then you become one with the infinite. Purnatvam is achieved by becoming nothing. The moment you want to become someone, that is finite, that is not the infinite. So with intermixed statements as it were, you are seemingly confusing my understanding. The most interesting part is, why would Krishna want to confuse Arjuna? Actually, any master will only be giving clarity. So Arjuna is already having a lot of preconceived notions. So since he is having preconceived notions of this is what is right, this is wrong and all that, when Krishna comes and gives him facts, now that is confusing him. He is attributing the confusion to Krishna, but actually the reason why Arjuna is getting confused is because of his own preconceived notions. So that is another sadhana tip which we get here. If we want to absorb this wisdom more, we need to work on our preconceived notions. When you approach these Sunday sessions, if you sit with your own strong preconceived notions of what is right, what is wrong, then what you will gain from these sessions will be very limited. When you do the sadhana and when you come out of the preconceived notions, when you become open, that is when you begin to absorb the deeper imports of the scriptures. So all the confusion is caused because of the conflict between what you think you already know and what these masters are now giving. Whatever the masters are giving are based on facts, and whatever you think you know is based on opinions, preconceived notions. So there is a conflict between these two. The student is unable to fully absorb the higher wisdom because of this conflict. And to the extent you resolve this conflict, to that extent you will start receiving the wisdom, absorbing it, and you will start growing spiritually very fast. It is in your hands only. So Arjuna is feeling confused. See, the sadhana tip here is, there is a practice which I am giving you. Learn to unclutter your mind. Make your mind very simple. When your mind is simple, your intellect becomes very clear. You gain a lot of clarity. Most people, they think that going on analyzing is clarity. Actually, if you keep analyzing endlessly, it is a symptom of confusion, not clarity. A person who has a simple mind, innocent mind, can directly understand, can directly receive this wisdom with immense clarity. When it comes to worldly education, the qualification is knowledge. But when it comes to spiritual education, the qualification is not how much you know, it is how much you are willing to unlearn, how much you are willing to let go. When I say let go, I am talking of all the preconceived notions which you may have gathered through the various experiences. That the Yoga Sankirtan Sadhana will help you to let go of these preconceived notions so that you become very, very pure and innocent. Your mind becomes very simple. And a simplistic mind will absorb the higher wisdom directly. Wherever a little bit of analysis is required, that also will be done. But nothing will be out of his or her control. So as sadhaks, you should work on this. Start making your mind very simple. Start thinking in a simple way. See, the problem with the modern education is, we think that thinking means, there is intelligence means you have to use a lot of complicated words and all this. The jargons, today is for every simple thing in life, they coin a particular phrase or a word. So many jargons are being used, and you slowly your mind becomes very complicated. Whereas if you go and see the Upanishads, if you see the Bhagavad Gita, they are all very simple statements, but the mind is not able to directly receive that and absorb that, because the mind is so used to a complex way of thinking. So Arjuna says, you are seemingly confusing my understanding. And then in the next line, he says, Tadekam vada nishchitya. Tell me decisively. Tad ekam vada. Nishchitya means decisively. Decide on one thing, and then tad ekam vada. That one thing you tell me. Yena means by which. Shreyaha aham apnuyam. Shreyaha means the best, the highest. What is good for me? I may obtain the best. So it is very interesting. He says, tell me decisively. Means he feels that Krishna is not decisive. Isn't it so absurd? It was Arjuna who was not decisive in chapter 1. Entire chapter 1. Arjuna was in a complete state of confusion. He was so indecisive. And then in chapter 2, when Krishna spoke to, for the first 2 verses which Krishna spoke, it was a very decisive message which Krishna gave him. Kutastva kashmalamidam vishame samupastitam anaryajustam asvargyam akirtikaram Arjuna. How have you fallen into this state? What is your potential and what are you talking, Arjuna? Kutastva kashmalamidam. How have you fallen into this state of delusion? This will not give you any success here. It will not give you any peace of mind. It will not give you the spiritual development also. Klaibyam masmagama partha means don't fall into the state of weakness. Rise. This was a decisive message which Krishna gave him right at the outset. But Arjuna didn't understand anything. Therefore, we should be grateful to Arjuna that he didn't understand. Because if Arjuna had understood then and there, then we wouldn't have got the entire Bhagavad Gita. Isn't it? So we are very grateful that Arjuna is in a confused state. We should be very grateful to Arjuna. So he didn't understand the decisive message which Krishna had given him. So Krishna had now took the roundabout approach. Okay, directly when I tell Arjuna, don't fall into this weakness, get up and fight, he is unable to understand this. So he now starts the longer route, which is, he started off with the highest philosophy, then the Sita Prajna we saw, and now chapter by chapter he'll be revealing all the secrets so that Arjuna can prepare himself and understand that message which he gave initially. But when he takes the longer route because of Arjuna's deficiency, now Arjuna feels that Krishna is being indecisive. This is the irony. The master is doing everything for the student's sake, but the student is judging the master and mistaking his intentions. Supposing, let us say, a student goes to a master and says, "Oh, I want to realize God. What should I do?" Now the master looks at him and he finds that he has a lot of desire for wealth. So many things, So he tells him, first you become rich. You go and do your work. Complete your experiences. Go and get married. Enjoy the beauty of a relationship. So many things the master may tell him. Now why is he telling him? Seeing what is there deep within a student, he tells him, do that, all these as sadhana, and as the student practices that, he will go on guiding him. Then only he can purify himself, he will complete all the experiences, and he will come to a stage where he can single-pointedly surrender to God or that infinite, which is required to realize God, to become enlightened. That was the original question which the student asked. But this roundabout method has to be taken because the student is not yet ready. Now when the master says, go and acquire more wealth, go to the world and function. Supposing the student says, oh, he is not a true master. I am asking him about God. But he is talking to me about wealth, earning more wealth, about forming more relationships in the world, about doing various worldly activities. I think he is not a true master, he is worldly. Supposing the student thinks like that, what can you say? That is what is happening here. Krishna, there is no necessity for Krishna to give the whole of Bhagavad Gita. It is because Arjuna is not able to understand that he has to say so much. And here Arjuna says, tell me decisively. You are being indecisive, he says. So the confusion for Arjuna is, I explained to you about the principle and application. So that is where the confusion is. See, there can be one principle, but there can be many applications of that principle. So you cannot have one application for every situation. Principle may be same, but the applications will vary. The principle is, let us say, you need to have unconditional love towards your child. Now supposing the child is getting into drugs. Now will you say, I have unconditional love for the child, so let me buy more drugs and give the child? Supposing you say that, then there is something wrong with you. You will not say that. When the child is going towards drugs, you may be quite stern with the child. For whose benefit? For the child's benefit only. When the child is going in the right path, you may encourage the child more. It all depends on the situation. The application will vary. The principle being one, the applications will vary according to the situation. Now, when Arjuna says, I want, tell me decisively one thing. See, he is a soldier basically. So he is used to just following orders. Now, in spirituality, it will not work that way. You cannot grow spiritually by merely following orders. That is why we say surrender is important, but blind faith or blind surrender will not help a person to grow spiritually. You will have to understand the principles and consciously do the sadhana. Now Arjuna is not used to that. So he says, no Krishna, don't tell me too many things. Just tell me one thing for me to do. Life is not so simple like that. You can't have one solution for all the problems. Because if, see, that one thing Krishna has already told him, get up and fight. Arjuna is unable to understand that because of his blocks. So he requires all this wisdom to break those blocks so that he can understand why he should fight. Otherwise, halfway, just because Krishna says if he gets on with the fighting, now first day he'll fight and second day again he'll say, I don't want to fight. He will not have the energy to sustain the efforts and be consistent there. So this very thing which Arjuna is asking from Krishna, tell me one thing by which I may obtain the best, that itself has no meaning. It shows that he has not understood the difference between principle and application. So we'll stop with that here. Next week I'll explain to you some more the principles related to this line, and then we will move on to the next verse wherein the Lord starts giving out the message. See, these two verses are very useful to Krishna also, because by allowing Arjuna to express himself, Krishna without any effort he can read what is going on in Arjuna's mind at the deeper level. Otherwise the master has to unnecessarily penetrate and try and see what is there at the deeper level. So when Arjuna expresses himself fully, the work becomes easy for Krishna. He doesn't need to waste time in penetrating. He can just straight away understand what Arjuna is going through, and accordingly he will start giving the message. So when it comes to Krishna's answers, it will be so interesting, because he doesn't give the karma yoga straight away to Arjuna. He works on Arjuna's psychology so much. See, in the entire Bhagavad Gita, apart from the direct messages, in the yogic approach, we'll also be learning the different psychological messages, the tips which we'll get to handle various situations, and will be very useful to handle people, whether it is your colleague or whether it is your friend or your spouse or children. These psychological tips will help you to handle your relationships better. So that also we'll be learning as we go along. Okay, so we'll stop here today. We'll do the meditation, nididhyasana. Sit in a very relaxed way. Gently close your eyes. Do deep breathing. With every breath, feel the divine vibrations. Oh. I am going deep within myself. Beyond this body, beyond this mind, beyond this intellect, lies my true self, which is the infinite supreme being. From this moment onwards, I choose to overcome all my internal blocks and surrender completely to the Guru Shakti. I choose to let go of all my preconceived notions and make my mind very simple. I am Swayam Prakashit, self-illuminating. Offer your gratitude to God Supreme. offer your gratitude to your Guru and all the holy masters. Slowly come back. Wriggle your fingers, your toes. Rub your palms together to create a warmth. Cup your eyes with your palms. Gently rub your eyes, cheeks, forehead, top of the head, back of the head and neck. Slowly open your eyes. Welcome back. This is a very interesting journey, the inner journey of self-purification. If you take it in the right spirit, it will inspire you to do more sadhana. But if you misunderstand this, your mind will start resisting, because when you gain this wisdom, all the impurities which are there inside will start surfacing. Rather, you will become aware of them. So it needs a lot of courage, it needs a lot of devotion to be able to do the sadhana in a sustained way. And as is mentioned in the Upanishads, truth is only for the strong, not for the weak ones. It is the bhakti, the devotion and surrender which will give you that inner strength to be able to sustain your efforts till you reach the ultimate goal of self-realization. Okay? So next week we'll go into more depth. More tips will be given to you. Every week, just keep absorbing whatever is given to you and practice them. So I'll see you in the next session. Thank you very much. Hari Om.